29-15 Atlanta.
When you're young in it, you want to impress everybody. You want to show everybody education, and it's like breaking it down on the medial plane, on the medial axis. We're gonna a deep longitudinal sleep, and they're like, what does that mean? So instead, you're like, hey, I want you to pull and rotate, and I want that thumb to touch your shoulder. There you go.
He said, you got to get back to being a farmer, and the farmer knows one thing: you plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree.
The Dallas Mavericks select Cason Wallace from the University of Kentucky. 24 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors select Jacoby Walter from Baylor University.
Like a lot of these guys, this isn't what they want to do, right? It's not workout. They want to play basketball. Like if you throw them on a court for 5 hours, they're probably fine. You throw them in a weight room for over an hour, they're like, hey, I'm out of here, man. So, on top of them half the time not wanting to be there, now you're throwing all this terminology at them, and you're like, dude, like, come on, just tell me what I got to do. I want to get out of here.
Okay. So, I guess we could start there with, you meeting an athlete, right? Sending somebody to you through a referral, or you hear of a guy and then he wants to enlist your services with E4. And we can definitely talk about how you got into it and how you founded it. But I guess my first question is, that first meeting, is there anything you're looking for that really makes you excited, or anything that really puts you off, like red flags?
Yeah, there's a few. So we'll start with deal breakers, right? Low energy, bad attitude, not wanting to be there, not understanding what we're asking of them. Because a lot of times, if this is a high-end athlete, a D1 athlete, a pro, whether it's overseas or NBA, you're here for a reason. And usually an agent, a scout, or somebody close to them are referring them over and saying, hey, you need this, whether it's injury, corrective exercises, whether it's performance enhancement, they're here for a reason. So if they're not taking it serious, then it's very hard to go down that journey with them. That'd be one of the main red flags that I have. One thing that really excites me is asking follow-up questions. When I'm telling them to do something and they say why, or hey, how does this help me? That opens my eyes, my ears, everything. Like, okay, you're starting to understand. It's huge for me, and I love explaining it. I think every teacher, everybody that has some type of role to educate somebody, they love that. They love when somebody's taking an interest in it. They love when somebody is asking, even if it's just to fill you out, because a lot of new guys are looking at me like, do you know what you're talking about? So they're going to ask, why are we doing this? Why are we putting this drill with that drill? Why are we moving this way? And I love it, because I love being able to break down, and then they understand mind and body what's being asked of them at that point.
Deviating a little bit from the question list, I want to talk about one of my favorite players who plays for the OKC Thunder, and I love this dude. I'm going to guess you're describing him when you're talking about follow-up questions, because something tells me that he's a real thinker. Talk to me about training.
That's one way. Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Like, something about his interviews, something about the way he was carrying himself, even on an earlier level, was like, this guy's serious. Like, he's serious. Like, everyone says they're serious, but this guy feels like he's different level of serious. And then seeing him pretty much shatter my expectations. My expectations were super high. Like, I had him as like the 6th or 5th best player in that draft, and I was like, dude, OKC Thunder got a steal here. And then he comes out and he's leading the league for like half the season in 3-point percentage, and that's not supposed to happen when you're advancing up. You know what I mean? He's not a Steph Curry, but he came out and he's just like wetting it. I'm like, is this guy ever gonna miss? So talk to me about training him. What did he do differently that you think really helped him out?
He takes it serious. He definitely takes it serious. Even when he doesn't want to be there. And that's the big deal. Like, even with my son, we talk about it all the time. It doesn't matter if you want to be there or don't want to be there, you just do it. I think that's one of the major keys. I think his inner circle, his dad and his mom's been a huge influence mentally. His brother, Keaton, who I mean, you talk about mentality. Everybody in that family has a different mentality to push and to strive for greatness. And then Cason, a little bit different with Cason is he's very, very much going to ask you, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? Do I need to do this? And I'll give you this. He'll probably kill me for this one, but he has a little bit of a sweet tooth. And this summer we're talking about it and going on the nutrition plan, and the staff at OKC is amazing. AP, Kevin, all those guys, they're amazing. So we talk all the time, and we're going over his nutrition plan, and he's joking with me, and he's like, so I can get Raising Cane's today. And I always throw money into it, right? Like with the NBA guys, they're like, okay, but there might be 150 million on the table. Who knows? Who knows if you don't gain this 8 pounds, if you don't lose this 4 pounds, whatever the goal is. And he just takes it serious. He's like, all right, give me the creatine, give me this, whatever's on the menu, he's gonna go ahead and do. So, just understanding the long-term goal is huge. And I think having a 20-year-old that understands the long-term goal, you don't really see that too often. And then he takes that over on the skill side, and then he takes that over into the game prep side. And like I said, he's going to check that box. Whether he wants to be there that day or not, he's going to check that box, and he's going to do a great job at it.
I've been really fortunate to know a few NBA players off the court, so I get to see the fantasy and the reality of it, right? And sometimes the fantasy of it is these guys train 24/7, and they don't have any bad habits, and they never drink, and they never smoke. And then I remember literally I think it was 2000, 2001, and an unnamed player, he's like, I'm quitting smoking. That's how serious I am about this. And I was like, you smoke? I went crazy. And there's a lot of young players that are really good players that people don't realize, but you see them out and about, and they're consuming copious amounts of sugar, and you're like, that can't be helping. So it's a matter of inches, right? It is, because especially with the new CBA, and you see a player like Gary Trent Jr. right now, and he just signed a minimum. Damn, right? That was not the old reality but this is the new reality, the new NBA. And some of these young cats, they just taking this money's just going to keep going. Mm-hmm. But I feel like with the new CBA, that money's going to get concentrated into the top. So if you're a young player that, maybe 2 years ago, the max was an obvious, right? It's an obvious thing they're going to get. But now there's such financial implications of that. You might go from max to min real fast. And that gap could be work ethic. It could be that kind of stuff. But also, I think it matters to the organization that's taking that chance on you, because they're signing you to a new contract. They see that you take care of your body this way. There's no trust issues there, right? But you show up to camp 6-7 pounds overweight every year. They got to, kind of put you in shape. Now there's a trust issue. I feel like that has to weigh into the consideration when you're parking long-term dollars into a player.
Yeah, and it just comes down to opportunity, right? And we saw it in 2016. There's some players that they were in the right place, right time, and they got probably triple of what they normally would have gotten. So same thing with these new deals, right? It's just opportunity. Our goal on our side is to have them ready for every opportunity available. So the rest is up to their agents, up to the GMs, and everything else. But I agree with you, man. It's really up to, what is it? What's the Amazon deal? I was reading a little bit about it, and it just blew my mind. I mean, the CBA deal, the Amazon deal,
NBA money has always been life-changing money, whether we're talking Bill Russell times or we're talking about this time. But now it's you have the potential to not change your life. You have the potential to change the life of your grandkids, your great-great-great-great-grandkids. We're talking, there's going to be, in my lifetime and your lifetime, there's going to be a $200 million a year athlete.
Yeah.
$200 million a year. That means a 4-year deal could be almost, or 5-year deal could be almost $1 billion. That's coming in 12 years.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So all these kids, AJ DeBonster was 16 years old. That might be the second contract he signs. It's not that far off. I'm not talking 2050, 2060. I'm talking soon. So talk about E4. You founded E4, right? Did you co-found it? You founded it?
I founded it. So I was, I started in the corporate gym world. I really started at 18 because I was always in the gym and I needed a job. Just like most 18-year-olds starting college, I needed to buy a car, and I thought I was just going to work the front desk. Back then they had these personality tests, I guess is the best way to describe it, for what role you would fit best in. And I was very introverted, extremely introverted, and I matched 99% with sales. So they threw me in with sales. I was like, really don't want to talk to anybody, but okay. And back then, you sell all the training and you send it over to the trainer. So I'm 18. For about a year and a half, I'm doing that. And I fell in love with the training side of it, because I'm sitting down talking to people about their goals. I'm talking to them about their nutrition and building this program up for them. And then I'm sending it off to somebody else. And so I switched my major. I got my certifications, and I really just dove in deep on the training side. And I really focused on the corrective exercise, because I wanted to focus on people that were going from injuries back to performance and high-end athletes. So I did a lot of corrective exercise. I was promoted through the corporate world, left that, started a gym, left that, and because I was working with a lot of my at the time overseas guys. So I had a lot of college guys, overseas guys, and then a lot of the Dallas Fort Worth high school kids started coming in and really building out the pipeline. And then, like everybody says, COVID hit. So it was okay. And then we did a lot of virtual training, actually, and we did very, very well on the virtual training. I love the virtual training. It's just that was a segment and a time and a place, right? So as soon as everybody was able to go back outside, go back into businesses, I did a deal at the location I'm in now. So 2020, we really started E4 Athletics. I had a bunch of athletes already. We had a few pros or about to be pros come in, because there wasn't a lot of places open still, or they went out of business, unfortunately. And we just started building it out. The athletes that I've had, a lot of them I've had since the beginning of high school, middle school, or even sophomore, junior year. And they've just continued with me. Manny Obaseki, he's from Allen, Texas. He's at Texas A&M right now. I'm really big on him for this year. You might see him in the draft this year, go pretty high. I have Jalen Lawal. He's a high schooler right now that his name's not that known, but you're going to hear about him in college next year. And then, of course, Cason, Jacoby, Keaton, Zaire Smith, who you guys probably remember 2018 76er draft. We just started training this summer, and that's a guy that's back on it. So helped him out a lot this summer. Injury free, everything is good with him, and you're going to see him do some damage this year.
That's great. I mean, I think this segues just perfectly into, because you talked about working with kids when they're young. So you're building.
Correct.
It's like a Lego set. You're building up to something. You probably have 4-year goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals when you're meeting an athlete, based on them, based on their body, based on what they're even trying to do, based on the role they're playing. So there's a theory that sometimes you can do too much too soon and start to break an athlete down. There's been a lot of talk about, and I'm not sure how much of it is confirmed, because I like to go without the preconceived notions. I know there's a lot of talk about the Ball brothers, the injuries that they're sustaining now. Was it linked to being pushed too hard when they were younger? So talk to me about injury prevention, long-term sustainability, and sort of building an athlete up the right way, according to you.
So I always tell everybody there's no such thing as injury prevention. We could limit injuries and we can put them in a safe environment to help, but there's no such thing as injury prevention, because genetically, if somebody doesn't have as much cartilage, if somebody doesn't have certain things, they're just predisposed, right? That's why you'll have somebody that blew their ACL out 3 times in 3 years. And you're like, man, you're just unlucky. But then you find out their uncle did it also, and their grandfather did it back in the day. And you're like, okay, there's probably a little more to this story than what, just playing basketball since you were 6 years old. The Ball brothers, I have no clue, because I don't know their medical record. So, without seeing that, I don't want to say, confirm or deny anything. They're on their own journey, right? But you can, there's something called controlled stress and uncontrolled stress, right? So controlled stress is us doing 6 squats. Your body knows you're going to do 6 squats. Your mind, everything set it up. Uncontrolled stress is playing one-on-one for 3 hours. Your body doesn't know what it's about to do. It doesn't know if it's going to move side to side, jump, because you're reacting, you're responding to outside sources, right? Uncontrolled stress at a younger age is probably more negative than controlled stress. Now, there's a whole bunch of studies that say, yes, work out, but don't lift heavy because growth plates, because ligaments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, any study you send me, I could send you a study that combats it. That's what I meant by telling you everything's ambiguous, because there's so much theory when it comes to this stuff. So it really does have to do with what you follow and what you feel is correct and what you study more than anything else. Because I could tell you all this and somebody could go ahead and in the comments go ahead and say, well, that's wrong because this case study in 2012 says, and everything I'm saying will be the exact opposite. But that's why it's all theories. There's only a few principles that we actually go off of, right? The said principle, our body adapts to the workload we put it under. That's a principle no matter what. But everything else is going to be a theory that, we try to follow, and we say, you know what, that makes the most sense. That's why I'm going to do it this way.
Okay.
So,
is there a theory that says that like everything is proportionally related? Like something along the lines of, if I increase one thing, so say for instance, I come to you and I say, I want to be more flexible. Is it potentially I lose something to get something in all situations? Like I could say I want core stability, but does that decrease something else somewhere? Like, do you
right?
get, what I'm getting at?
Yeah, like a force velocity curve, right? Where if I'm going to become an endurance runner, I'm probably going to not be jumping as high because my power level is going to go low because my endurance went up, right? Or my flexibility went up, which means my quick twitch probably went down because I'm overextending the ligament, overextending the Golgi tendons, overextending the muscle. So now it's not short, condensed, and powerful. Now it's more elongated and set up for that kind of stress. So yes, there is a theory that says that. But again, there's some athletes where you're just like, okay, you could run 5 miles, you could dunk a basketball, you could bench 380. Like, so there's always an outlier that, is the exception that proves the rule, right?
Well, I think that's what makes it so remarkable, because almost every pro athlete is an outlier in and of itself. Like LeBron is the outlier among outliers, but like you take a Victor Wembanyama and it's like, all right, find me the study that tells me what to do with a 7'5" guy with his flexibility and his length and his size and prevent injury. But one thing what I've found interesting is, when it works for a player, we get copycats. Like we get a lot of people copying it, right? So one thing was, the light test with Steph Curry, right? I watched that and I was like, this makes sense. I did something like this when I was younger. It really helped me out. Then there is something that is relatively, I don't know if it's new, but it's something that I've been following a lot because one of my favorite dunkers, Kador Ziani, he's preaching this and Victor Wembanyama is preaching this, which is, how do you feel about barefoot training?
Personally, I don't mind it. I'm not pro, like every athlete has to do it, but I'm not against it. If I have some athletes that say, hey, in college we do this, I say, sure. Just so we're going to be on the turf running laterals, so you're probably going to slide all over the place today. But, if we're doing squats, if they want to, I'm okay with it. There's, again, studies that say, hey, this is the best thing that's ever made. Our big toe opens up and we're able to control at a high level, is able to build our ankles, our peroneal tendons. We're able to strengthen those. And then there's other people like me personally, when I train, if I train plyos, I want to train in basketball shoes because that's the feel. I want that little comfort of on the ball of my foot to push off of, because in barefoot, I'm not pushing off that way. So, I think both of them are correct. Again, I'm sorry. I know I keep going back to it, but that's why I say it's so ambiguous, because it really is, what is it? Reality's in the eye of the beholder. So that's really what it is. If I tell you this is the best thing ever and you agree with me, you're probably going to push a lot harder on it than if I say this is the best thing ever and you're like, I'm not feeling it.
Okay.
So,
I mean, that you know, you just I feel like I'm interviewing you, but on the same side, you're helping me more than you realize right now because you just keep queuing me up for my next question every single time. It's amazing. It's great. It's a great ping pong we got going on.
That's
Short
good.
term versus long term goals, right? You get a
Mhm.
guy like Cason Wallace, right, who is going, in my opinion, probably going to be a long term starter in the NBA. He's probably going to be much more than a role player. Of course, at this stage, he's playing with Shea, he's playing with Jalen Williams, he's playing with guys who are ahead of him in the pecking order. So he's a role player right now. So in terms of like benefiting the OKC Thunder, it's going to be some of the catch and shoot stuff, but it's long term. It might be more pull up on
Sure.
ball stuff, right? So how do you balance short term and long term goals?
It really depends on how much time I have with them. You know, there's again in high school, I have all year, right? And we might have 3 months where we're in and out, but for the majority of the year, we're able to really break down what we need to do. In college, we usually have all summer or most of the summer. In the NBA, it's kind of spotty. Like I'll get the schedule and from the agent or from the strength and conditioning staff, and we have to go off of that. So
Mhm.
in short term, it's like, okay, what do we need right now? What's the goal? My goal is always you got to try to play 82. So what can we do to make sure you're going to play at least those 82, if not playoffs, right? But at least those 82. Um, that's the first thing. And then after it's what they need that summer or that off season or what we are able to do. If I only have 3 weeks, then it's just kind of like a tune up. Hey, let's get X, Y, and Z done. Like I said, OKC is amazing. So we're able to go back and forth. I'm able to send them what I've done. Then they say, oh, hey, he's up here for 2 weeks. Then they send me what they're doing. And we're able to just play and build off of what's going on. Cason gained almost 15 pounds since April. So that's huge for a 20-year-old. I mean, you usually get that at 24, 25, but he's been so strict on what he wants to do that I think it's 12 or 13. I have to look exactly. I think I posted it, but you know, that's pretty incredible for a 20-year-old turning 21-year-old to be able to do while still playing, while still active, you know, getting the open runs in and moving around in the summer. So long term, then it's kind of, again, the first thing always is durability. Is this going to affect our durability short term? Is this going to affect our durability long term? So is it something, are we going to put up too much weight where by 30 years old, all your joints are all inflamed and you're hurting all the time? No? Okay, we're good then. So you know, that's another part of it. Or are we going to lean out too much? Are we getting away from your homeostasis too much that long term you're going to break down? Again, nutrition, how are you going to break down? Are we not getting the right nutrition in where you're inflamed all the time? Are you going to break down? So that's what I look at long term. And when I train my trainers, I always tell them look big first and then start chopping it down and then look small. That's way easier to work with.
Fair. So obviously, right now, you know, you might be working on something like, I mean, for instance, like him getting bigger right now might help him to guard up a position potentially, right? He's already super positionally versatile for a guy his height. I'm not saying I would put him on a power forward, but I wouldn't be sweating bullets if he was on a power forward, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and that's pretty rare for a guy who can guard like at his height. He's what, 6'2", 6'2 and a half, 6'3",
6'3", 6'3" and a half.
6'3" and a half, and then you make it with shoes 6'4" or
Mhm.
6'3" and a half, 6'4", and then he's like, we're talking Drew Holiday build almost,
Mhm.
right? Like, and that's when I saw him, that was sort of the vision, right? So that's interesting. There's this theory that I heard a professional coach in the NBA say, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it, where he said, if you do one thing well, like really well, you probably an NBA player. If you do two things well, you might become an all-star. If you do three things well, you might become a superstar. And if you do four things well, you're going to be in Europe. I thought that was interesting. So the concept of trying to specialize versus doing too much is there a point where you encounter an athlete that kind of has that sort of ADHD complex where they want to try to do everything and then in the process end up doing absolutely nothing?
For sure. And I think the younger you are, I think it's better. This is just my insight from being around it for so long. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. But I think the younger you are, pick everything. Try to do everything. Try to rebound well. Try to assist well. Try to score well. The older you get, I think that's when you start to really try to find out who you are, right? Like in high school. And then college, I think, is really when they're like, okay, this is what you do well. Like you said, do you do this and do you do this well? Then, of course, in the NBA, that might even change. Who was it? Was it Looney in high school was like the next KD? And then in the pros, he's a rebounding machine, and that's how he's getting paid. So go rebound well.
There's a lot of guys who change positions as well. Like, I mean, you take a guy like Vince Carter, high school power forward, right?
Yeah.
That was necessity in a nutshell, right?
Mhm.
And because of his athleticism and stuff, sometimes they put him at center, but then you get to the NBA, you're a small forward, and then a couple of years later, you're a shooting guard. Usually
Yeah.
doesn't go that way, but that's ultimately that. So another thing that I'm very, very curious about is multi-sport athletes. A lot of my favorite players have had like a lot of experience with different sports. And I think that's interesting because I played tennis before I played basketball, and I was always amazed at how much one helped the other.
Mhm.
Like, and I see a lot of players, they have volleyball experience, football experience. Allen Iverson with the football. There was, I think, Hakeem with the handball and the volleyball, right? Joel Embiid with the volleyball, right? You take a Luka Doncic and you're like, what sport did he play that brushed up his, his hand-eye coordination? You take a guy like Jalen Suggs, also a really good football player. LeBron James, I think, was football. So at what point, you talk about working with kids as young as, grade 6, grade 7, right? Like you're working with younger kids. So
Correct.
at what point do you take a 2 or 3 sport athlete and compel them to specialize? At what point do you think that's advisable? At what point is it doing more harm than good?
Usually sophomore to junior year, that's when you're going to see them start specializing. Before that, there's a lot of factors, and you probably know this in basketball. What happens if he was 6'3" in the 8th grade and he's 6'4" in the 11th grade? He was a big his whole life. Well, maybe football might be better for him, right? Maybe he's instead of being 230 pounds, go ahead and put that 30 extra pounds of muscle and go get a scholarship for football instead. So I think specializing in middle school is not the best way to go. Like you said, there's just so many sports. I think it's also the mind. The mind starts to adapt. I bet you your agility was better because of tennis. So I bet you were a little quicker laterally compared to some of those other guys, which you say, oh, guess what? I'm going to be a defender because this comes easy to me. So it kind of plays on itself, right? As opposed to somebody else who's, let's not get it misunderstood at all. There's some that are just freak athletes. Like no matter what they choose, they're going to be great at it. There's just some people that you're just like, you won the genetic lotto, man. Like great job to you. Doesn't matter if it's football, doesn't matter if it's baseball, basketball, soccer, they were going to excel. They're faster. They don't produce as much lactic acid. They're stronger. Their brain just understands sports. I mean, there's just some people, and I know you've seen those people too. You just watch them and you're like, you just could have done anything you wanted. Huh? So you have those people, but talking to the majority, especially if you have parents of middle schoolers and freshmen and sophomore, really let them choose multiple sports. Let them play football, basketball, track, things that are going to help them and change them up so they're not in these same patterns. So there was a study over women's sports, right? And women ACL injuries are through the roof when it comes to soccer, volleyball, and they're trying to understand why. But one of the things that people are saying is in women's sports, they're specializing way too early. Usually at 9, 10, 11, 12, they chose their sport, whether it's volleyball, soccer. I know those sports are usually year round. So they don't have a chance to really go to another sport unless they're just playing rec. And usually if they are, and I've seen it because we have a lot of volleyball girls, the girls that even play rec basketball, we see way lower numbers and injuries than the girls that just specialized at a young age. Because your body starts to just focus in on those movements. And for sports with a lot of plyometrics, I always tell everybody we're bipedal, right? We're built to walk forward at very long distances. That's what we're built for. we're not built to jump 100 times, 200 times every day. Like if we were, we'd have ankles like a rabbit that are super long, like rabbits, frogs, that's what they're built for. So as humans, us doing that every day, there's going to be some wear and tear that happens. So putting them into different sports where it could kind of rest that, but still get their athleticism up, I feel like that's what's going to be amazing for them. Like you said, handball, hand-eye coordination is going to increase. So these other things definitely help.
That's really interesting. So there's a lot of talk about the world catching up to the United States. Some of this has to do with training. Some of it has to do with AAU. What are your thoughts right now on the current AAU system? And is there something you would change to make it a little bit more like Europe? As a very leading question, because obviously I have my dog in this race and I already have an opinion, but I'm curious if you changed my mind.
Okay, let me hear your dog first. You know, I don't want to hear your whole opinion first, but let me hear your dog in the race first.
My thought process is that AAU is a business, right? And we're commodifying these kids way too early. And comes down to it, they're playing too much and not training enough, right? Where in Europe, you're playing one game a week. So you have a lot of time to sort of reset. You have a lot of time to study what you did, how you moved, etc. And especially when you're talking about like prodigies like the Lucas and the Wembys, there's a team around these kids that are as early as 13, 14 that are really dissecting everything. So they take a little bit more time to get things right. But obviously here we're playing, you know, in the United States and Canada, whatever, we're playing way too much, I think. And then again, as you said, like what is controlled and uncontrolled, right? What's better for you? And if you're doing like, you know, a tournament, sometimes a weekend tournament, some of these kids play 5 games in a weekend. That's a lot of uncontrolled movement. And then there's so much pressure you're putting on these young kids. And then there's also, unfortunately, I think the more games you play, the more disillusioned you can become about the type of player you actually are. Right? Because if you have a kid who averaged 30 and won, the championship over the weekend or whatever, it's really hard to tell them that they got like XYZ to work on too, right? So the way I'm looking at it is like less games might be better for the kids.
Yeah. Attrition, right? You're going to tell me at game 6, you're going to see the best players play their best on that weekend? There's no way. There's no way. You're getting attrition. You're getting players that usually are probably taller, right? That's going to be your best player. You go to the championship and you probably have a taller team. Why? Because of attrition. You don't have to jump as much because you're taller. You probably got easier points because you're taller. Maybe not as many transition baskets because you slowed it down because you're taller. That's like the tip of the iceberg. I totally agree with you. The European system, to me, is surpassing us when it comes to AAU, when it comes to grassroots and high school. I was watching something about Serbia, and they do a lot of 3-on-3. They almost never play 5-on-5. I don't know if you saw that also.
I'm Serbian.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So it's 3-on-3. They'll have 6 courts, and everybody's playing 3-on-3. And I love 3-on-3. I think that helps the IQ, the cutting, the individual scoring, and also team scoring, individual defense, and also team defense. Whereas, like you said, with our current system, you might have one great player on the court, and it's like put the ball in his hand and let him go. And are we developing them the way France is developing, the way Serbia is developing, the way that Germany is developing? I don't know. Do we have the best athletes? I still think so. But some of these countries, they're learning how to play, and it's a lot easier for them. I mean, we're here in Dallas. I've been to a lot of Mavs games, and that game's easy for Luka, man. Like watching him play, it comes easy.
Yeah, I've been watching Luka and Jokic for a really long time. I first saw Jokic when he was 16 years old. I never envisioned a 3-time MVP, but I thought he was going to be a really good player because he was doing some funky stuff with the basketball. And I've always believed that the willingness to take risks at a youth level usually translates to good things because, like you might have a player, I remember this was like 4 or 5 years ago. We were watching this youth team, and there was this kid who had like a monster game, but he had like 8 turnovers, and I could see the vision behind every one of those turnovers. I was like, man, those are all good ideas. His body just hasn't caught up to it yet. and you see this person, like this coach, just ring this guy out. Well, why'd you have so many turnovers? And I'm like, shut up. Like, I hope he doesn't listen to him. You know? So that was the same thing with Jokic, who driving his coaches crazy, and Luka was very imaginative as well. So, it's curious because Luka and Jokic were both guys who didn't go number one in their drafts. Luka went third, right? I guess some people thought he was very unathletic. And then Jokic fell all the way to the 40s because I guess a lot of people thought he was unathletic because every team passed on him.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about athleticism that I think we get wrong? Because I'm hearing a lot of, not to bring up too many players, but obviously, like, you take a guy like James Wiseman. The athleticism is so obvious, right? Jumps high, he runs like a gazelle. And I think sometimes we become very rigid in terms of how we define athleticism, right? That we're measuring certain things and we're not measuring certain things. And it's like the quality of your analysis can only be as good as the accuracy of your measurements, right? Broken ruler, it doesn't matter how tall you say someone is, broken ruler is broken ruler. So what is it about athleticism that you feel, if you feel, that we get wrong when we're talking about draft prospects?
It's not track. You can't just put an objective number and say, yep, he's going to be good because these are the stats. Why nobody even cares about bench press. I remember when I was young, that's what they talked about. He bench pressed 185 for 25 times. Wow. Now you don't even hear about it anymore in the draft because there's no correlation between bench pressing and if you're a good player. Same thing with athleticism. Again, athleticism is so subjective, right? If I could stop faster than you, I don't run fast. I'm not very laterally fast, but if I could stop faster than you, I could probably get my shot off, right? And what we just talked about, can you do one thing really, really good? If I have a really, really quick release, I'm probably doing something really, really good. If I could stop faster than you, I'm probably doing something really, really good. That's what I think we get wrong is how athletic are you, but how do you use it, right? Just like somebody, we could put them in a skill session and see and be like, man, they're so skilled. But then you throw them in a game and you're like, what happened? Where did that player that I saw over here go? And I think it's just how people understand the game. I mean, you have people like some of my favorite players, Shea, where you look at him and he's a little unorthodox, right? But you're just like, okay, I see it. I see what you did there. And Luka, like you said, people consider him unathletic, but how tall is he? 6'6", 6'7"?
He's 6'7". He's wide and he's heavy, right? What I
He's
think
so
makes
tall.
him so great is his footwork. It's the same thing that makes Shea great, is that footwork. And it's ironic you say the unorthodox thing. That's what made Derrick Rose, unfortunately, injury prone as well, because I think his gait was a little bit wonky and sometimes his landings were a little chaotic. And I think that put a lot of pressure on his joints, but ultimately that's also what made him impossible to guard, because you have a rhythm as a defender of where you think the next step's going to be. And when a player has that type of movement pattern where they're such a master of their footwork, like a James Harden, like you can't anticipate where that next step is going to be, and it might not even be a step. So it is complicated, but yeah, like I think the unorthodox thing works for Shea. And it's funny because it leads perfectly into my next question, which is explain Kentucky guards for me, man. Like how you keep lining these up, I'll never understand. But
well, are we gonna do Arkansas guards now, or are we still gonna call them Kentucky guards?
we'll call them Kentucky guards prior to 2023, Kentucky guards, because historically, I mean, the list is enormous. And just to anyone watching this after, just Google Kentucky guards and just see the list, because it is insane. It's not just Shea, it's not just Cason Wallace. It is, it's your Tyrese Maxey's, it's your, Emmanuel Quickley's. It's like a lot of guys. It can go down the list. John Wall, like they don't tend to perform super well. Like you take a guy like the guy Reed Shepherd, he might have been one of the best collegiate guards in Kentucky history. And he looks really good right now. Like I'm watching him play and I'm like, man, this guy is like the quintessential game is slowed down a long time ago guard. Like he just gets it. I'm very high on him. how is it the recruiting process? Is it something they do that's different? Are they just there? Is it like, because that's like it's a cart and horse thing, right? Like, are they just finding the right guys? Like someone was telling me the other day, it's like Santa Clara just produces really great, like really smart basketball players. I'm like, I think they just recruit really smart basketball players. You know what I mean? So what is it about, like, you saw it firsthand with Cason, right? Like you saw him go through Kentucky. What is it that they do in Kentucky that's different? Is there something different that they're doing?
Well, it looks like they know what they want, right? Like you said, just like OKC. You're looking at OKC, you're like, man, you're hitting every year on these drafts. Like, you go back and you're like, even the trades, you're just like, great job, but they know what they want. And I think Calipari knows what he wants, and I think when you're winning and you're successful, I think not just you know what you want, but you get what you want, right? Like you're not scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, man, I wish I could get that kid. You're over here, one of the top dogs, just like Duke, Kentucky, Duke. Can we say Michigan State still? I remember, like, but
there was a while.
People when those coaches call, you're gonna pick up the phone and you're gonna entertain it and you're gonna go on the visit. And then just the facilities, you know where you're playing, whether it's ACC, whether it's SEC, like, you know your schedule is going to be great. You know scouts are coming to the games. Like, it's the whole package that comes into it, if you ask me. And that's not seeing behind the curtain. That's just, my observation. And then Calipari, man, he's an excellent recruiter.
I wonder sometimes if it is like the bigger picture, right? Because sometimes, like, again, I'm not a coach, but if I were a coach, like if I was coaching like grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, even college, I would try to put kids into areas where they would fail. It's something we actually saw, ironically, because you're, also training Jacoby. Like, it's something we saw with the Raptors last year, is they would deliberately put players in situations to fail. So they find out that they take a player like Emmanuel Quickly. He's a great floater range assassin, right? That's pretty much his MO. If you look at a shot chart in New York prior to, if you watch him play, it's a lot of that 10, 12 foot Tony Parker range stuff. Come here, it almost like he was barred from taking those. They were like, you going pull up 20 feet or you're going right to the rim. We are abandoning this entire zone for you. And you're going to struggle. When you're going away from your natural tendencies, you're going to struggle, but you're also going to develop. And I feel too often I'll see players in Kentucky, and I'm like, they're not necessarily leaning into their strengths as much as they're leaning into their development. And I wonder if that 1 year for other coaches that are super worried about the win total and their jobs and, not, making like, you know what I mean? Like that abundance that Kentucky has, the job security that Calipari had, allowed him, I think, to not be so invested in the day-to-day. Like, oh, we losing this game. It's like, no, we're developing this player. That's our job here. These are all one and done guys, right? So we're trying to set them up for the NBA. And so, like, training them for real NBA situations as opposed to giving them something that they're not going to be able to use at the next level. I think it's almost like I look at Montverde or like some elite prep school as like prep for the NBA. Like, they're not preparing you for college as much as they're preparing for the NBA. I look at Kentucky the same way.
No, that's a great point. I haven't really looked at it like that. I just look at my players, to be honest. I don't look at the big picture.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great point. I think there's definitely something to that, because you see those kids when they were younger playing grassroots, playing middle school, playing high school. A lot of times they did, right? Gilbert Arenas is doing that right now with his son, where it's just him. Let him fail, let him figure it out. And I talk about that with my trainers, and when I'm trying to develop them more on the business side, is failure way to success. Make sure the failures aren't too big, something that you can overcome. Like, you don't want to have 18 turnovers in a game, in a pivotal game, right? Where now it shuts you down and you're like, I'll never be a point guard ever. But yeah, you want them to be able to be like, hey, on those pick and rolls, okay, you had 3 turnovers. It's not a big deal. I saw what you were trying to do. Let's go ahead. Let's try to run that again. I mean, I definitely see that.
I think it just takes organizational stability and like sort of big picture approach. Like if you're a coach, to not think about, okay, well, I got to get this win, I got to get my job, and thinking to yourself, I got a left-hand finisher with a weak right hand, and I'm going to force him to go right, and I'm going to bench him if he goes left. Like I'm literally benching him if he goes to a strong hand, and just saying like we're going to force development that way. It's like, I don't know. I think the Raptors used to do it really right when it was Jama and Coach Casey, and you saw a lot of crazy development. It's ironic you bring up the OKC Thunder. Man, your clients just get drafted to the best situations, don't they? They do. Because honestly, there's a lot of NBA teams where I get the sense that they really don't understand what they're doing with player development.
Oh, and I could attest, like, I don't know all those stories, but I could attest even with Cason right after he got drafted and we were working in the summer, they came down and visited with me and for the week, and the trainers worked out with Cason. Like I put them all through a workout and we stayed in touch, and they still joke. We still have that camaraderie, and I think that's huge. To just see, hey, what are you doing in your off season? You didn't have to do that. You really didn't have to do that. That wasn't Wembanyama where you're like, hey, let's make sure he's okay. No, you're doing it because it shows that you care as an organization. I thought that was huge.
Yeah, but that's exactly it, right? Like when the Raptors initially, like the grassroots of the NBA championship that they won in 2019, everyone thinks that it's about, oh, they traded for Kawhi. It's like, bro, like who did they trade for Kawhi? As players they developed. Who did they trade for Gasol? As players they developed. And they put so much into, 2-for-1, 3-for-1 type of trades. Most teams would have depleted their depth, and Kawhi would have showed up to a bunch of role players, but instead they were able to graduate from within, get guys like Norman Powell, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. Siakam became like what? He was a 27th overall pick, became a 2-time All-NBA. That's on him partially. That's on his trainer and all the work that he put in, and Rico Hines and all this stuff. But it's also on the Raptors, like handling his development properly. Like it was not a for sure thing that Siakam was going to become that player. And I think like the OKC Thunder is like, that's the one organization where I'm like, yeah, they get it. Like they really get it, because they're not treating there's no like inconsequential prospects for them. So Cason could be like 12th pick, 11th pick. What was he? 10th pick? 10th pick. And then, they're not going to treat him like an afterthought there. That's a lottery pick, right? But they're going to give that same love and attention to like the 26th pick, the 40th pick, because you never know. You never know. Yeah.
Sure.
So how do you like apart from, the 3-point line being bigger, how do you train a player going from that level, right, to the next level? So how do you train a player who's going from college to the NBA? And what are the specific things that you're trying to adjust up for?
Honestly, I call it the transition season. There's this little 4 to 6 week period of after college, whether they just got drafted, just finished summer league. There's a lot of different cases and scenarios, but we call this a transition season, where it's really just like, hey, what's your dings? What's been beat up over this past year? They're usually coming back from college just a little bit different than when they entered college. So it's just trying to understand what their body is, because my only goal, like that's what I hang my hat on, is trying to get them to play all 82. To me, that's the big deal. It's not, oh, let's go put 20 pounds of muscle on you so you can be the biggest guy out there and you could look huge. It's no, how do we get you and your body to a homeostasis where you're not too big, you're not too skinny, your body fat isn't super low where you're more injury prone, where your body fat isn't super high where you're injury prone, where we're okay. And then what dinks happened? Oh man, I've been dealing with this ankle thing for the last 4 months. It's just been bothering me, or this knee thing that's been bothering me. Okay, let's focus on that. That's my main thing. Everything else is secondary. Then it's usually just a Q&A. Like, hey, what do we want to accomplish this summer? Man, I want to get back to a 41-inch vert. We tested last time I was 38. My legs have just been tired all year. Okay, let's do that. Want to increase speed, want to increase, the lane drill that we did. I just had some terrible time, so let's go ahead and do that. That's always secondary to me. My main thing is durability. How do we keep you durable? That's A1A.
You working on a bestseller?
I am developing an app. So I am doing an app, getting these programs in where, some of the plyo 12-week programs, 16-week programs, that it's almost done. It's going on the store in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
No worries.
So, and then you can find me at E4 Athletics on Instagram, e4athletics.com. Everything E4 Athletics. That's the easy one, right? But yeah, stay tuned for the app. I think that's going to be huge. We're going to go everything from our mobility programs, our nutrition programs, plyometrics, because that's what, whenever a kid first comes to me, they're like, I want a 41, 42-inch vert. So here you go, how to do it the correct way. Strength programs, speed, agility, change of direction, which like I was saying earlier, I think stopping quicker is the end all be all to everything. If I could stop quicker, I could start quicker. So change of direction, deceleration programs, all that good stuff.
That's amazing. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to beefed up Cason Wallace in year 2. That's going to be really cool to watch in the OKC Thunder. I'm gonna tell you this right now. We're gonna see if I'm right. I think they're gonna win a championship this year. That's just me thinking. I think they're gonna win a championship. They just added Alex Caruso. They added, like, that team is next level stack.
Yes, man. I hope so. I hope so. I don't want to jinx anybody. I don't want them texting me, blowing my phone up because I jinxed them. But I think it's a bunch of good guys over there. It's a bunch of good guys. I would love to see them win a championship this year.
Yeah, they're my preseason favorites. Like, just based on, like, I mean, they just added like players that I like for the last 2 years, 3 years. They've been adding players that I just really believe in. Cason Wallace, Chet Holmgren. Now they added one of my favorite centers in the league, in Isaiah Hartenstein, and they added Alex Caruso. And I'm just like, bro, like, the rich just get richer and richer. And oh, by the way, if they ever wanted to trade those draft picks, they can trade for pretty much anyone they want.
Right?
It's just it's embarrassing how good the OKC Thunder are and how good Sam Presti is at his job and how good.
And that rookie just got. I mean, that rookie that's, he's out right now and he's probably gonna be out for the year. But I was like, man.
Yes, my countryman Nikola Topic, like, he's incredible. Like, I was pushing like I was pushing for Cason the year before, and I'm like, yo, the two organizations that just keep drafting all the guys that I really like are New Orleans and OKC. Like, any player I love, they nab them up real quick, right? So again, it comes down to knowing what you want, like what you said about John Calipari, right? Like, they know who they want, they do their work early, they understand that. And and also good luck to, of course, Jacoby Walter in his first year. That's going to be cool. And we need to talk about Keaton. If you have like 2 minutes, I'd love to talk about him.
I have 1 minute to talk about Keaton. I mean,
yeah. So explain the success, because he went undrafted. Not an unfamiliar situation for a lot of pro hoopers. They go undrafted, and a lot of people don't realize how deep the talent pool is in the NBA. But man, like, there's super, like, there's about like 100, 200, like. You train European players, you train G League players or whatever. There's a certain, player that was picked in this year's draft, and I'm not going to mention who it was, but I said this kid is not a top 1,000 player in the world, and people lost their minds. Like, how could he play in the NBA if he's not a top 1,000? I'm like, yo, you need to see how many players, good players in the G League that would wipe the floor with this guy right now. So talk to me about, going undrafted and the journey back to the league and all that stuff with Keaton, because it seems special.
Keaton's special. What did Jerry West say? I saw that quote where he said, "I'm a wolf because wolves eat dogs."
Okay, that's
Keaton. He's a wolf. So there's dogs on the court. He's a wolf. I mean, he's everything. Those junkyard dogs have nothing in comparison to him. I mean, he's gonna do what you need. He's gonna outwork. He wants it. And like you said, he's undrafted. To be in the NBA and be undrafted is very, very special, especially at the guard position. Because we hear about it at the forward or the center position because they just had to catch up to their body, right? They were 6'10" with a 7'4" reach. We just had to learn how to play basketball, and that's why they got undrafted. But a guards are a dime a dozen. If you're under 6'3", 6'4", there's, like you said, 1,000 players that could go probably. So when you come in undrafted and work as hard as you can to get there, and then have a summer league like Keaton had, I thought he played amazing. And it was the little things. It was blowing up all the screens instead of going around or going under. He was blowing up every screen I saw, controlling the offense, knocking down the open shot. But his defense he just wants it. I mean, if there's a 50-50 ball, I don't even have to watch the TV. I know who's getting it. So that's Keaton Wallace in a nutshell, and just a great overall kid. Just I can't speak enough of him. And this is what I told him. I told him this when last year when Cason got drafted. I said, Cason got drafted because of you. And he looked at me like all weird and awkward. And I said, you were the one when Cason was in 8th grade and 9th grade, grabbing him and pulling him to every workout that you were in, pulling him to every open gym you were in, pulling him to every skill session you were in, those 3-hour sessions. There were some workouts back in the day I would write up because I'm like, I'm going to break him today. I want to see how far he can actually go. He just go, man. But like I said, Cason will follow along. So that mindset, I think, is just different. And even when you get 60 or 70% of that mindset, you see the success that other people around him are having just because of him.
Yeah, I think it's a little brother syndrome, right? Like there's a lot of cases. I remember Morris Peterson used to talk about his older sister beating the shit out of him. You know, there's tons of examples of this.
Reggie
Shante
Miller.
Porter, Michael Porter, Reggie Miller, Cheryl Miller. My God.
Oh, popular, right?
Well, I think it just comes down to playing the right players at that youth stage. I heard, you know, in grade 7, like my coach told me, if you have a serious future in this, you got to go and hang with kids who are 4 years older who are good. And if you can hang at that level, you still have a chance. It kind of helps when that kid literally lives in your house. You know what I mean? Like that kid who's a little bit bigger, a little bit, and it's like Paige Beckers, you know, she's playing against dudes, she's playing against Jalen Suggs and stuff, and that helped her development too. Like you look at what Juju Watkins is doing right now, it's the same thing. She's playing against men. So anyway, man, thanks a lot for doing this. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can check in after the season and see how it all went. But I learned a lot, and I hope the audience learned a lot too.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you having me. Like I said, sorry, a lot of my stuff is ambiguous, but it's just
No, it's great. It's honest. It's honest. This whole channel is based on honesty. I would hate for you to come on here and lie to sound specific. If the truth is ambiguous, the truth is ambiguous.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
But
All right.
that's what I love about it all, man. So awesome.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate you.
No problem. Talk to you later.